of information about the entry restrictions or requirements for coming into the Philippines. It's kind of like something and nothing, like news and yet no news, because what I found is that even if it may be on an executive order from the president, it doesn't actually trickle down to the public for a little while longer, and probably a lot longer than most people would like, because they've dropped the mandate on the mask, and they've made that so that it is optional. So across the board it's optional, with, as far as I know, only 2 exceptions, and that is in hospitals, which I suppose is understandable because they're wearing masks a lot anyway, and the other one was in public transport. So has it come down to the public? Well, when I try to go into the bank without a mask, they do make a point of saying, "Sir, you need a mask." And I point out to them then, well, you know, the mandate is now dropped, and it's optional for whether you wear a mask or not. Well, yeah, we haven't seen that yet, which is not actually my fault, is it? But anyway, the idea is that you sail through all of those things that you must do as a foreigner within a foreign country. And that's the one thing that you really can never forget, is if you're the foreigner, then this is not your country. I used to make a joke with my son when I first got here. I stayed with my youngest son, and we used to see somebody walking along the road, and I'd say, "Look at that guy, he's walking along as if he owns the place." Oh yeah, actually he does. He's a Filipino. And that's the thing that you must always keep in mind. Someone said that I'd been an example for those who seek to come here and start a new life, that I'd integrated into the society. It's not so much that I'm integrated, because I'll never be invisible. When I go into Taliban, everybody knows me. They may not know me personally, but if they were to say, "Who's that?" "Oh, that's that foreigner." So they know, because I'm one of the very few. I don't know everybody in Taliban, and that's one of the things that you have to be aware of. I take it very seriously that when I go into Taliban, even when I'm driving, I actually take it seriously that I will be held accountable. Not so much accountable, but will be held responsible for the effects that I create. So if I drive badly, that's not a good thing. If I'm ill-mannered, that's not a good thing, because people will look and say, "Yeah, there's another foreigner. It's another foreigner." And the arrogance of various foreigners will be noted and taken down. Now, how does it manifest? It manifests by the foreigner in question will become frustrated at not being able to be understood. Now, I have the same thing, that I want to be understood, obviously, and all of us do. We want to be understood. We want to be understood easily, and we don't want to make it seem as if we're not very bright. And for someone who's listening to us stumble through an explanation of what is needed, they might be forgiven in thinking that sometimes we're not very bright. Well, for one thing, we're not very bright when it comes to the language. There is such a thing here in Filipinos speak as the nosebleed, and everybody knows it in its English form, nosebleed. And a nosebleed is what's attributed to having a difficulty to express yourself in English. Well, of course you're entitled to be having difficulty expressing yourself if English is not your first language. Beth and I have this all the time, because Beth, within the limits of her English, she will create titles to our videos, and I get lots of people who may be geniuses in their own country, in English or whatever their language is, and they may be grammatical perfection, but you have to allow, when you're listening to or watching or picking up or clicking on any of our videos, that Beth does a great job of doing the titles. Are they always specifically to do with everything that's in a video? For instance, when she asks me what's the title of that video that you've done, if it's something like this video that I'm doing now, very difficult to tell her exactly what it was, because sometimes I'm talking about people who are making comments about how a title is made. They're making other comments which are not very nice, and I answer those. And it really is very difficult to put a specific title, because it will be several things. So we do our best on that. We get people who are first-time browsers who have found our channel, and they look at the first video that they look at. They don't like the grammar in the title, so that's their first and probably only criticism and only minute that they're going to spend looking at the video. So what do we do with those? Kind of, if there's something funny or appropriate that I can say on a comment that is bad, then I'll say it. I mentioned in a video that I did the other day how one lady had made a personal comment about a bra that could be seen when Beth was on video, and I made what I thought was a mildly funny response without getting all offended. I said, "Oh, the bra police are here." I often say the grammar police are here. These are people who they'll probably never come back to the channel again, and they're going to leave us with a critical comment. I'm good on criticisms, but as long as they're nice, you know. If someone says that man is not wearing a crash helmet, that's fine, because if it's true, it's true. But if he says, "What's that old fart doing, roaming around without a crash helmet on?" then I don't go for that. I don't have a target on my t-shirt, so I'm not here for you to take pot shots at. So difficult to come up with an accurate title that deals with every aspect of what we're doing. Well, we've had a subscriber who we will eventually meet, wrote and said, I came through immigration and it wasn't so bad. It took half an hour, and I said, that would be interesting for a lot of people. Could you write and tell me exactly what happened, and then I'll relate that, right? So we know now that there is to be an executive order from the president that they are going to drop requirements for entering the Philippines. Okay, now that said, what's happening at immigration is another thing. So Has it become official? The Philippines is a minefield of paperwork. I don't know how they got any trees left because the paperwork seems to be more important than the people. It should be paperwork before people is what their mandate really is. So even though there is, even though I've heard an official say that this is what's going to happen, actually at the border, at the entry point, at the port of entry, it's not actually happening right now. And my friend told me he had no gripes. I'm assuming that he has had the so-called vaccines. I'm assuming that he's had those. I'm trying to overtake a huge dump truck that's in front of me. So I'm assuming that our friend who gave me this report has actually already had the jabs. So he would definitely have an easier time. But he's had the jabs and he was required, this is about 3 days ago now, he was required to show an e-health card, is how he put it. Don't know anything about those, other than they obviously tell what your history is. And if you've had the jabs, they'll say had jabs 1 and 2 and 17 boosters for all I know. So he had to provide that card. Now in order to get his Balikbayan visa, which is a freebie for 1 year, he had to show his marriage certificate, and I suppose he had to actually show that he was in the company of his wife, so he'd have to have a wife there as well. So that he certainly had to show. This was something that I found interesting. He had to show his driver's license. Now he didn't say whether it was a Philippine driver's license or whether it was not sure whether he was from Australia or from the US, and it doesn't actually matter, does it, for the sake of this piece of information. So he needed to show that too, but he didn't. He said the whole thing only took half an hour and it was fairly painless, and he didn't make any mention of being in quarantine. Now that has been a big thing, that if someone has not had the jabs, they've got to be in quarantine. And the other thing that I don't think he mentioned was he didn't mention anything about having to show a negative test for the dreaded so-called COVID. He didn't have to show any evidence of having had that. And what I've been seeing is that people, when they were coming in, say 3 weeks ago, would have had to have shown a negative test that had been taken in the last, I think it was as little as 24 hours. It may even have been 12. Bureaucracy can go mad. So you can get in, but then you could get in before if you'd had the jabs and you had the documentation. So this is only negative information. In other words, it tells you what is not being allowed in spite of the executive orders that we're hearing about. Now, on the executive order for dropping the mask, I still see that many people are wearing the mask, and a subscriber wrote, and his viewpoint was, for the sake of everybody, you should be wearing the mask. And somebody else said, when one subscriber said, I'm never going to wear the mask, I haven't worn the mask, and I'm not going to. That was his viewpoint. And of course, the next subscriber in the comments said, oh, well, that's very clever of you, because you should be wearing the mask out of respect of other people. It depends on your beliefs. Let's face it, we all think differently about things. So it is something that is down to a person. And if you watched the in the European community in Congress there, they were questioning the representative for Pfizer. By the way, the last thing that I saw about the Pfizer CEO being interviewed, he was being questioned somewhere where he was actually seemed to be in the process of walking through somewhere, and a reporter said to him, have you had the have you had the vaccination? And he was a little bit embarrassed. He said, actually no, not yet. That big word, or words, not yet. So when the representative was questioned by a European Union official, a representative, a congressman, shall we say, he said, did you carry out research on whether the Pfizer vaccination would protect others against catching it from you? In other words, did taking the vax ensure that everybody else's safety, in line with what the person who was talking about the mask and how you should be wearing the mask, same thing with the vax. Are you having the vax we were encouraged, weren't we, to have the vax. I'm going to try and pull in here, so hold on. Yeah, we were told to have the vax to protect others, but in fact the person who was representing Pfizer admitted that they had done no such research on that, so they actually didn't know. And then she came out with a phrase that has confused and baffled doctors who presumably would normally know these things. She said, no, we couldn't do that. We had to move, quote, we had to move with the speed of science. We had to move with the speed of science to get that vaccination out. Maybe you're much cleverer than I am and you can work out what that means. I couldn't work it out. So, as I was about to say, as far as the mask goes here, I can't go into the bank, not nicely, not courteously, with good manners. I can't go in and brush past the guards and say, I'm sorry, it's against the law that you should be trying to make me wear a mask because it's my choice, my option. Maybe I could do that, but I wouldn't. So if it's really insisted upon me right now, maybe that makes me a wimp, but I'll put the mask on until I'm in. Here's the irony. As soon as you're through the door, past the guard, you can take the mask off and nobody is going to say anything at all. So how good is it? In my opinion, doesn't really matter, it's just my opinion. But people are making their own choices now, and soon they're going to be able to make their own choices when they're coming into the Philippines, but not yet. So even when the executive order is declared signed, it will still take time for all of the various parts of the hierarchy to get down. When I went to the bank, when I went to the bank, the manager wasn't there, so I went and spoke to an official. And I said, why is it that it's been mandated that it is our choice, our personal choice, but you are still requiring people who come into the bank to wear a mask, which actually you cannot lawfully do. If the person really stands their ground and makes a fuss, they'd probably just let them in. So she said it hasn't been declared officially on a memo from head office. So you see, go into any of the big stores where they require a mask. If head office has not filtered it down and said we can't enforce this, it's no longer enforceable, so It's only to do with employees, because if they're employees, they can enforce unfairly, but they can enforce what they like. So I'm here. I'm actually going to LBC. Thanks for being with me. Bye. I'll try and remember what the title of this should be.